This is the Committee on Commissions, and this is September 11th, 2023. Let me say, we're not going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. We don't have that as our custom on this committee, but I would like to take a moment of silence to remember the sacrifices on that. Come on in. The sacrifices on 9/11, and that we all think back. It was a long time ago, but let's never forget. So let's just take a moment to remember all those who died, especially the folks in New York, and the Pentagon, and Pennsylvania. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Today, we're going to dive back into this project. Well, welcome back, everybody. Our last meeting was in June. Here we are in September, kicking the program back on. You should all have an agenda in front of you. We're going to go through the agenda, and then I'll tell you that John and I met with the speaker several weeks ago in late June, and I'll debrief with you about the speaker's comments and where we are, and also have some things, some goals we'd like to achieve during this next few months. Today is Leggy Week, so this is the week that if you're going to put in legislation, and we're certainly not ready on this committee to output legislation yet, so it won't really affect us, but there's a lot of people scurrying around getting their legislative comments into the folks downstairs, across the road. So we need to respect that activity. That it's only going to last a week. So, but I do have some news for you in that regard and how it will apply to this committee. But we'll go over that in a little while after we've heard from our special guests. So, Deb, if you'd like to take it from here for the next few.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, honorable committee members. Thank you for allowing us time again to come back and share some of the updates that we've accomplished over the summer. And we have some more information to provide to you and help you do make your decisions and do your job more effectively, hopefully. Agenda, we're going to review, just give a high-level review of our meeting from May 22nd, and then dive into some of our improvement opportunities, the master list that we've talked about, continuing education proposals, the trifold that we've talked about having available through OLS, and then committees that could potentially be reviewed to repeal. So starting out with the review of the May 22nd meeting, Ann?
So I'm Ann Fitzgerald, Director of House Community Services, and as you know, we are staffing your special committee. And back on May 22nd, you charged staff with 5 things to do, and Deborah just listed them, and that's why that was basically the what we decided that to move forward, you needed us to track down this information for you, which we have done. If we don't have the information completed, we definitely have an update on what we have been working on throughout the summer. So that's what we plan on presenting to you today.
So the master list. The master list was the list of statutory and study committees that you guys are looking for. We went back and forth on this because we all, right now, staff, the different departments have their own spreadsheet because we have different fields where we need different information. My role, and I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself, Deborah Childs, Deputy Chief of Staff. And the only reason I don't have my name tag on is because my desk is all packed up. There's some furniture movement going on. But so I have my master list, House Committee Services has one, the Senate has one, and what we're really trying to do is get to one list that everybody can access. So we, working with IT, now have an export function from the Statutory and Study Committee page. Up on the screen here, this is the Statutory and Study Committee search page. Is everybody familiar with this? Oh, is that hard to see? It's where you can go in and search for a committee using the RSA or the name or a text search. So today, a lot of folks use this to find information, who's appointed to what committees exist. We are still working to clean up the data. However, an easier way for us to do this and give folks the function to be able to pull all of the data out of the system is we've created this new section here, export committee details. And if you can't see it, sorry, I'll send a link out after the meeting too, just to make sure everybody has access to the page and you can find this export function. So it's export committee details. And for right now, you can search active statutory committees and active study committees. You could do one or the other. There is the possibility of doing archived as well. However, because we're only focusing on cleanup of the data of active committees, we don't have the archived in the search. If that's something that you would require that you think would be helpful, there's about 1,500, I believe, archived statutory and study committees, if you want that information.
All upstairs.
Yes, exactly. But for now, so if we want to export this data, it exports into like a spreadsheet. It's called a CSV. But I'm going to export all active statutory committees and active study committees. You press the export button. And then it exports. And I'm sorry, we were having technical problems before, so now I can't. There we go. Sorry, this is not my laptop because we were having technical problems, but it exports into this export CSV. And if you open it up, it provides all of the active statutory and study committees and commissions, boards, all of them.
Usually that will.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes, thank you. And you can see all the columns at once. I'm just doing this demonstration so you see how simple it is. I'll send you the link. You can find the export. It's basically just pushing the button and it opens it up in Excel. Now, the reason you'll see multiple lines for every single commission is because this is pulling out all the appointments. So administrative rules, for example, has multiple Senate and speaker appointments. So there's a line item for every appointee. This is our second iteration of this export function. So we're hoping to have more, not hoping, we will have more fields eventually, which, as we work on cleaning out this data, we'll have more fields available to you. But we have some of the key fields exported now, which will have the committee or commission name, effective date, if there's a repeal date, and it will have a list of the appointees, the RSA number and information like that. So our goal is, we're not talking about Ann's spreadsheet or Deborah's spreadsheet and picking that apart. We have one export. And if there are issues, which there are some data issues, we get that fixed in the system. This is a huge first step for us from a staff perspective because we're looking at all kinds of potential improvements and ways we can use IT to automate processes going forward.
Very
Any-
good, thank you. That's good.
Any questions on the export? Ooh, ah.
Yeah, you're gonna email us how to,
You asked for familiar with it. I actually am not familiar with that page, so,
Okay.
from the, I'm assuming we start from the, let's see.
And you have to go down to the bottom. Representative Kofal, you have to go all the way down to the bottom and you see in the black ribbon down, we'd like to move it up, but you have to go all the way down to the bottom ribbon and it'll say statutory and study committees. And then that will lead you to it.
And now, as I mentioned, this is going to be huge for us to help validate and clean up the data. So please don't get frustrated if you look at a committee and you see somebody who isn't even a House member anymore, for example, and they're listed in here. This is a great opportunity. We haven't had this before. We now have this. We're working to automate a lot of manual processes. So please be patient. If you have any questions at all, you can always reach out to me, reach out to Ann and her team, and
I got a question for you. Is this more than single use? When I mean that is, can multiple people access this data at the same time?
absolutely. And one of the great things, so you could take this, export the data, and then you have your own spreadsheet that you could potentially work from. However, once we update the data, it's live. So if you you could run an export now, and then you could run an export in 20 minutes, and there could be something different.
Yeah,
because
my concern was it doesn't lock anybody out. So if I'm in there
Correct.
looking around, it doesn't lock John out or
No.
Matt
It's
out.
all, it's all real time.
Great, okay.
And then at the bottom of the export, something we had asked IT to put at the bottom was the total number. So if you scroll to the bottom of the export, you'll see the total number of statutory commissions, which I believe was 156 when I last did the export, and then study committees, and that was in the 20s or 30s.
Deb, can you do, from the top, can you do keyword searches on certain, to see if it pulls up, this committee is like this subcommittee is like this committee, got the same. So this is where our duplication can,
You can, on this search page, you can search on text. Text is often very helpful. I often use the RSA or the committee name, but the keyword, you could type marijuana, for example, to see if there are multiple marijuana commissions. Yeah.
cool.
Okay, now, Deb, one of the things that we're gonna try to do this fall is sort the data by chairman. So is is this system capable now to say, show me all the committees that tier into the eDNA committee chair or whatever?
So unfortunately, not yet. That's a field we keep in our spreadsheet. So that's one of the issues. We haven't been able to break from our spreadsheets and use this technology. But now we have this export, we're looking to add fields, so we don't have to keep our separate spreadsheets. That is information I can provide to you.
Okay,
A list of the chairman and a list of how we have it broken down. Just so you're aware, when a committee is created or a commission is created, there'll be an original jurisdiction. Maybe it was Children and Family that created the commission, but now the jurisdiction may be judiciary, for example. So there's an original, when you get that data from us, it'll have original jurisdiction, that's when the legislation was created, and then there's now the now jurisdiction, the committee with jurisdiction.
well, what we're gonna start doing soon is calling committee chairs in to this meeting room and talking to them about the oversight they have about various committees and commissions that tier up into their chairmanship. And it would be helpful to know, for example, Mr. or Ms. Committee Chair, you have 40 commissions or committees that tier into your committee. So we can kind of confine the argument a little bit when we're talking to them about the future. And so that would be a very helpful additional capability to this list.
Yes, and I did anticipate that, so I did give a heads up to our chairs that you may be reaching out.
Go ahead.
So they should be aware of their commissions. Some are more experienced than others or aware of their commissions. Some of them serve on almost all of their commissions, so.
Right. Thank you.
Yep. And so we are still working with IT. Again, like I said, the top priority for us now is working to clean up that data. And then we have some other improvements we're working on, probably a little early to share with you some of the automation plans, but we should be able to share that in the next couple of weeks, just for your information. Because every improvement we can make as staff not only helps our lives and improves our processes, but it helps the legislators as well. I think that covers everything for master list.
Okay, so I'll take on the House Continuing Ed program that we're going to have on studies. So you all have a draft in front of you of a proposal that it's based on programs we've done in the past. And I have to share with you, having done at least 3 of these in the last 15 years or so, they are one of the best attended programs that we have. We usually do 2:10 to 11, and you can't get into the room. So many people come in just for this. And as you can see, I was going to use names that we used to use, of participants. I thought I would just make it more general, say staff panel, member panel. And we have handouts on every single item. We have descriptions and definitions, and we go into great depth explaining to the membership what all the different types of committees are. And then obviously we also emphasize the study committees and commissions. And you can see it would, obviously an intro and welcome by a facilitator or possibly speaker. And then we describe the different vehicles for study as we've referred to them. And then go into a description if the member chooses to create a study committee or commission, sponsor responsibilities, standing committee process, and the first named obligations. Like for instance, right now, I have a House member who's been after me for 4 straight days because he is first named to a Senate bill. But see, we have to do all this background work trying to figure out the Senate bill. And this is one of the items that we're talking about, but I have to educate this member on why it's taking so long because they can't understand why can't I just call a meeting. So anyway, that is part of what we would like to explain. And then a roundtable discussion that can be the value of what a study is and how that can help the membership and help the process. But then examining, should we have prospective repeal dates? So it could be a wonderful opportunity for current members and maybe some freshmen to give some perspective. But we will, as we go through this process and we get suggestions from the committee on how we think it would work best, then we can just move forward. And I think the membership will really like this program. And you can see the staff panel would be similar to our presentation or what we did for you back in April. And it will be live streamed and on YouTube, and there may be an afternoon program that has nothing to do with studies. There may be, this is what we've done in the past. We've dedicated a full day to House Continuing Ed, and the speaker may choose, okay, let's have this subject in the morning, this subject in the afternoon. We proposed, I think I did Wednesday, but I think October 12th is a Thursday. We suggested Thursday, October 12th is a possibility because we were hoping that most retained committees would already get going by then, and that might be a good time where the membership could come in and participate in this program. So this is just a proposal that we want to bring before the committee as you asked us to create a continuing ed option, and we developed this, as I mentioned, based on previous programs. So that's
Great.
it. And we have all the material that we need. I was going to copy it all, but I just thought there was more, there would just be more information.
Great. Any questions? Okay, good.
Just a comment, glad to see it available on YouTube.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
And it saves on mileage.
Yeah, speaking of mileage, the system's back up. Those of you who were denied the ability to put in mileage over the summer, you
In
can,
September.
right, you can, the summer's over according to our calendar, so you can go to the kiosk and put in your mileage now. Okay,
So that is the date we're planning on. We ran that past the speaker and leadership. If you have any concerns with the date, just let us know.
Then we have the trifold.
All right, I'll start with, so the OLS trifold pamphlet, and I'll first talk about why we decided to do the trifold pamphlet. This is basically so we can educate folks on the process of statutory and study committees, explain the difference of the two, and provide some tips, some questions to ask before filing a bill to create a new committee or commission, and then some suggestions of content. This will be in line with our continuing ed program. You know, it'll be like supplemental material, but it will be a trifold that will include in OLS as well. Similar along the lines of creating this trifold, We're also looking at boilerplate language for these committees and commissions, just to make sure they're standardized. We've had a lot of problems in the past, for example, not having a sunset date, having commission names that take up the full screen when you come in the morning because they're so long, instead of limiting the characters. Just having consistency, like the first named House member will kick off or schedule the organizational meeting for a House bill, but the first named Senate member would do that for a Senate bill. We are still working on this. We have a draft of the trifold, but not yet ready to share with you today, because it's all departments. We're working to make sure all of our pieces are clear and concise and can fit in the trifold, but we should have that available for your review either end of this week or next. And just so you're aware, the speaker plans to meet with the Senate president too after we get through all of this initial work, just to try to see if we can stay on the same page as at least as much as possible, the House and the Senate, so we have consistency. And I'll turn it over to you to.
And as Sarah mentioned with the trifold, our goal is to list what each office does or is responsible for, but as concise as possible, because after a while, people can't hear what you're sharing. But it's good for them to know what this is all about and give them a backstory. But in the meantime, there is going to be an email going out explaining the process. So as we have members gearing up this week to, who knows if there are commissions looming out there, just to explain, consider this, because some of the items that has been brought to our attention, for instance, is the 45-day effective date. Where did that come from? Why do we have that? And you hear members say, well, that's what they gave me, but I prefer this. Okay, but that's a conversation that goes on between the drafter and the sponsor. Nobody else participates, but sometimes the sponsor doesn't know what questions to ask, and the drafter is assuming via an email that this is what the sponsor wants. And that is a problem that we just shared with that Senate bill that I mentioned, where the House members first named. A senator cut and paste and sent it to OLS, and they said, oh, this is what the senator wants. But that isn't, at the time, that wasn't their goal. So anyway, there are little things like that. And we just want to get people to think, all right, so if I'm putting in a study, what is it that I want to do? What do I want to say? As we've talked about before, and I won't go over everything we shared last spring, but we're hoping that this trifold, that's the goal, to get it to the members, and so they can refer to that and at least provoke some, or make them think about what their end goal is for whatever study they're creating. And as Deborah mentioned, we had hoped we had more something more solid for you today, but because of all the different offices being involved and just tweaks, we want to give you the best product that we can give you, and we figured a few more days would be better than a basic draft.
And we're open to releasing it in a draft form. We
Mhm.
just want to, make sure it's as clear as possible and has helpful content, but then releasing it as a draft and getting feedback from those who are utilizing it would be helpful, and we can make improvements before we finalize it. But this is an important part that we can't emphasize enough, the importance of, and where we may need your help as far as a boilerplate. And it may not just be continuing ed and creating a trifold, but possibly including rules, changing our House rules, or putting something in statute to help, just to help get this consistency. I think a lot of people don't understand how much churn can be caused when things are not consistent. We did have one recently, the Charitable Gaming Commission was created, and there were several problems with that created so much work for staff and legislators up to the Senate president and the speaker. And just as one example, in that commission, there were some appointees that didn't say who the appointing authority is. So for example, generally it will say the Speaker of the House will appoint 2 members, the Senate president will appoint 1 member. Well, there were some others listed and it didn't say who the authority was. Of course, we had to have meetings, talk about that. What are we going to do? Somebody assumed that the House clerk or the Senate clerk would make appointments. They don't make appointments. So what we did was have the Senate president make one of the appointments and the Speaker of the House make one of the appointments as well, working with the leaders. But it creates a lot of churn with how some of these are created and if it's not standard.
And in this particular case, it started way back in the spring when it was initially in there, and that took some work by the committee, and then the people who were representing it. It was just it led to a lot of confusion at the time, but it did pass, and then it was vetoed, and then was inserted in House Bill 2. So now it's no longer, it was a Senate bill initially, now it's a House bill, and we have to figure it out. And as Deborah mentioned, it's not just a few people sitting around. There were multiple meetings and multiple phone calls of legal counsel, House clerk, Senate clerk. And so that takes a good deal of time and days. And so that's the type of thing that we're trying to avoid. And we could have avoided all of this by, upon drafting, if the sponsor said, this is who I'd like as my appointing authority. And that piece will also be in the trifold, that you have to think that through. I think I may have mentioned in our previous meetings that years ago, we used to literally, there wouldn't be appointing authorities. And so say you had a 21-member commission and would just list a teacher from New Hampshire. So staff would get together and we'd all, between the clerk's office, our office, and we'd get phone books out and we'd start looking and trying to find names and people and match them up and calling different associations. So this is way better than it was, but it's still challenging. And that's why we know when there's no appointing authority, it can cause problems.
Yeah, man.
Well, it's nice to hear that you weren't calling individual teachers, just trying to solicit their interest, but it was actually associations. I think it's it's the efficiency and effectiveness of everyone who works here that we need to be looking out for. And so I think this makes a ton of sense, and I think we should be creative right outside of the continuing education, outside of an email to the membership. Let's make sure that we're continuing to reiterate how important this is. Also smart not to roll all this out right before LSR filing. Otherwise, we might have seen double the number of study committees and commissions.
Exactly.
But I think we're on the right track. And thanks for the work that you've put into
Thank you.
getting this together. Because it's not about oh well, it stinks to either y'all or the speaker and Senate president need to get together and work on this. That's not the issue. It's the issue is you've got other things on your plate, and we need to make sure that everyone's spending their time in the smartest way possible.
Right.
Exactly.
One of the things we had mentioned last spring was that we're going to work with Alaconis and his crew about putting together a legislative template. Is that integrated with the trifold? Is that where the trifold takes us?
That it has evolved somewhat into the trifold, and we still are working on the template, but they have to look at their own system, see how it can work. So I think it might, possibly we can come up with a plan for maybe the following filing term, but it won't be ready for this week. But the trifold.
It seems to me that would be readily fixable if we put it in the template, that you have to look for a sponsor or whatever, or that's part of the things to check off on the template, that have you done this, and if you haven't, then we'll see if we can get OLS to kick it back, say you haven't followed the template.
Well, Representative Joel, I think it's one of the options. You're absolutely right that's, but I think we're looking at all those options and what best could work with the OLS system. So I mean, it's still on the table.
So
I
I don't mean to get ahead of your briefing, but will we be able to hear from OLS soon about how they're doing with that template that we asked for?
So the initial plan is to get the trifold out there, because that will have a checklist of, some of the concerns we've had in the past and what could be included in it. Then I think the template would be the next step. The template is where we really need your help as legislators, because even OLS, it's hard to push back. When a legislator wants to submit legislation, they can only push back so much. So having this trifold approved by legislators will be, have you looked into these things first? And here are some things you should include in your.
Do you think we need to have a working session with OLS to mature the template?
After this week.
So this week or next, we'll have the trifold ready for you, and we'd like to roll that out as a draft as soon as possible for all legislators. And then I think that, seeing how that goes and what may change in that will help drive out the template. But then the template, I think it would be a collaborative effort. It's you know, I think OLS is challenged with, they could create a template, but if a legislator chooses not to use it, then there's
Well,
not much they can
Obviously,
do.
we won't have the template ready for the legislative work to be done this week.
Right.
So,
But yeah, and one thing I want to mention too is remember that the majority of the commissions and committees come later in the year. Though some are initially requested during this filing period, it'll be a few compared to the number that come later. You know,
Right.
lots of times you're looking at a bill and it's not necessarily, maybe it needs more work, so it turns into a study committee or, which is fine, or a statutory commission. So, you know, if we can get that trifold up and running and in good shape and, you know, get feedback and input into that, maybe we can look to get the template.
so what do you need from us for the trifold? Just to review it when
Yes.
Certainly, yeah, certainly. And when you guys give kind of a stamp of approval on the draft, we could share it with the rest of the legislators and then, you know, test it out
And-
do
and-
you have a feel when it will be ready for us to review?
either this week or next.
Oh, okay.
We could take it to chairs.
Right.
It might be, I would think next, only because we want OLS to participate, and this isn't a good week to ask them for
Right.
participation.
Right, he's chuckling.
We're probably gonna meet again in 2 weeks.
Okay. So,
Yeah, man.
So you brought up, you know, statute and rules as another way to
Mhm.
address some of the consistency in the standards here. And I wonder, I think we should just all be thinking about that because whether it's this year or it's next year or in the future, you know, there's nothing that keeps a legislator from looking at the trifold brochure and saying, well, I don't want to do it that way.
exactly.
But if we put something into rules or into
Yeah.
statute, then it would require everyone to use that template. So
Right.
Put in
Exactly.
administrative rules, they have to follow it.
I
So
mean, or
we're-
put it into house. Yeah.
We're proposing that, Representative Wilhelm, for you. We're going to, Paul is working on, he wants a list of what we may want for rules. And then we'll also have them for RSA 1449 and then, as you know, Representative Sheehan, the vehicle in Leg Ad that's staying there for us, or for the committee to, because it's in a retained bill status that may be amended with this information. So we are looking at that. We have a list that we're maintaining to share with you at a future
Okay.
meeting of
Right.
possibilities. And one of them, as Deborah mentioned, the lengthy titles. That just doesn't help
Right.
anybody. And then we have other items that you may not all be aware of. For instance, and we came across this one, if you go to our docket, the docket will say that this committee hasn't met in possibly 2 or 4 years. They actually have been meeting every month, but they have an outside entity because it's 21 members, but only 2 legislators. So they have a life of their own. And in that, we found their webpage, and in that it has a little, it says legislatively approved. They have a little seal that they created that, but they never send the information. They don't reach out to the members once they're appointed. They do not send their information to the House or the Senate clerk's offices. So for our purposes, we believe they're not meeting. And then it turns out, yes, they certainly are meeting offsite and have been meeting. And we stumbled upon that because someone remembered that there was a presentation, and then we researchers went online and we found it. We said, they've been meeting right along, but no. They do file reports, but they don't have to send them to us, or they may be such a commission that doesn't have to report. There is such a thing, and they just do
Yeah.
what they need to do.
I'm actually glad you mentioned that. So, you know, the export, when you export data from the Statutory and Study Committee page, so if you're looking at that last meeting held and you see 2008, that may be old data. It may be old data because the House and the Senate generally update the back end where that data is. They update it when somebody tells them to. They're not looking at these 200 commissions and keeping it up to date. It's somebody will send them an appointment notice. Okay, these are the House members, and they'll update, or this is when the last meeting was held, and they'll update that. So just keep that in mind if, you know, because I could imagine you'd see that column and say, oh, let's search to see when they haven't met. That's not 100% accurate. We are trying to share information with you when we know that there's a committee that could potentially be repealed. So take that with a grain of salt.
Sorry, I know Ann wanted to speak to. Why don't you go ahead?
No, you go ahead.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. I was going to ask, is there any reason why, even if a committee is meeting or a commission is meeting under an executive department with only a couple legislative appointees, is there any reason why they shouldn't be filing reports with the House and Senate clerks?
No, only if it's in the legislation that created them. That's where it sits. As I shared with you, we created that boilerplate language in 95 to make sure that the reports were submitted specifically to the Senate President, the Speaker, the Governor, and the State Library. But this one, or they could possibly submit it and only submit it to the Governor. They may not see the need. Because don't forget the chairmanships of these groups changes over, and then sometimes they just appoint people. They don't even realize, they don't even think about the originating legislation that created them. So they may just say, well, this is how our group functions now, and then you have new membership that they just reappoint, and it never comes back here.
Okay.
Mm.
So that is something that we could consider down the line as, standardizing the way the reporting process works. To
Exactly.
make sure that all reports for all committees and commissions are filed with the Senate President, with the
Right.
House
Because that's what we
Speaker.
did in 95, as I mentioned.
Yep.
So that language sits there, but there are still some groups who won't do it.
Got it. Okay.
And that's what we tried, but this is what we're finding out, and that's why we're saying it's taking such a long time that we're coming upon these items as we're searching.
And so many of these, they're volunteer driven, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's people are just sort of taking what, first of all, it probably took them a lot, like with state reps who you sometimes beg to run for office. Takes a lot to get them to say yes. And then once they say yes, they're getting a certain amount of information from certain people, not necessarily reviewing the statute that created their entity to begin with.
So I was thinking, along the line with Matt, put that little tick mark on the checklist. That, reports must be filed.
Mhm.
Because this is why we're reviewing this checklist, for things exactly like this.
I bet it's on there.
In your binder, there's a section that gives the history of how we came up with the different years when we created boilerplate language, but it's all just a narrative. We could pull it out and create a chart that'll be simpler to review.
Just to add, different commissions may have different reporting requirements, though oftentimes they're due around the same time, November 1st, December 1st, whatever that may be. There's nothing holding these people accountable to make sure they do their reports, even if it's in statute. And then also the reports, since they're all due around the same time, the Senate President, Speaker, Governor is receiving these reports all at once. And so if they're not, getting anything else saying, hey, I'd like to meet with you to review the report, it's just a stack of reports. And of course, they can't review all of these reports at one time. So that I do find is another issue. Hopefully the different commissions are taking them and running with them and doing what they need to do, but it's rare. From my perspective, working with the speaker, it's rare when somebody says, oh, I'd like some time with the speaker to review this report. So we put so much time and effort into these commissions and committees and some of these reports look beautiful. There's a lot of data. They've put in so much work. So I just would like to know what's happening after with some of them.
And as Deborah mentioned, we don't know if the reports come in. In some cases, we obviously will get them to the standing committee chairs, but we file them, and some people will the commission may never have met they couldn't get a quorum, and so they never met, and their final report will just be a letter to the Speaker, the Senate President, and the Governor saying that we could never make a quorum, so this is our report, just this letter, and it's unfortunate, but that's part of this process. That's why, as we've mentioned before, we put a lot of energy into supporting these commissions administratively, at least at the front end. And whereas if it's a chaptered study or even the commission, you can study that issue, but you don't have the dedicate staff time to create, to track down the people or to get it all set up or find a meeting place or whatever it may take to make that happen. And then if you don't make quorum, we have had lots of members stuck in that waiting, and you're waiting for different groups to appoint. And if they don't appoint, you can't have your meetings. So it's just one more roadblock.
Let me ask you a rules question. If a committee fails to meet quorum consistently, and that appears to be justification to eliminate that committee because it never meets quorum, is that something that has to be accomplished with legislation to eliminate that committee, or can there be a rule that says if quorum is not met, in 6 consecutive tries, that the committee is decommissioned?
Well, I would double check with Paul, with the clerk and House Counsel, but I would think that it would have to be legislation because it's law that created the commission. And it's law, I think you'd have to have a repeal date. But in many of these instances, they do automatically have a reporting deadline or appeal date. And that's what's unfortunate, is that they get to that deadline and they haven't been able to meet because they didn't have a quorum.
And then it's automatically
Mhm.
repealed
Yes,
or ended when it hits that date?
exactly.
You don't need legislation for that?
No. Because it's already built into legislation as part of the boilerplate language.
Okay, for our committee's edification, when speaking with the speaker in June, one of the things that he's going to allow us to do is recognize that our legislative window closes this week. So the question is, well, what do we do about legislation that might need to be filed to eliminate some of these committees, these commissions? And the thought is that he shared with John and I was that you come to the Rules Committee and you ask for a special legislative window to be opened to allow some of this activity to take place. And in the kindness of their hearts, they're likely to approve that in the Rules Committee. So that would be the plan of attack. We don't need to say at the end of this week, we don't have the legislation ready to go. We're done until next spring. No, there isn't another available opportunity with the speaker's cooperation to sponsor it through the Rules Committee. And I think there's some special window in your committee too, and Leggy Admin too, that I'm not sure I completely understand.
It's a retained bill, so we have, through October to work on that as well.
Okay,
And they can move it forward and and they can move it forward, and by moving it forward, it can then be amended.
And before we move to the last item, I just wanted you had asked the question about reaching a quorum, and I know that's extremely frustrating. We've had a couple recently too, where the chair will put in a lot of effort to schedule the meeting. They'll work in advance to make sure they have a quorum, and then a quorum doesn't show up. But in my experience working with the speaker, if it happens multiple times, it's generally somebody from the commission will reach out to me and say, hey, your House member isn't showing up, we need a new appointee. So that's another option as well. Maybe that House member didn't have interest in the commission, maybe they don't have time anymore, but we can get another appointee out to try to make sure a quorum is reached.
administratively, I think our video timed out. Do you need to do anything to?
No, this was just for the
Okay.
quick little demo of the export. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. And so the last section here we want to talk about is go over committees that could potentially be reviewed for repeal.
Do you have this?
Are you doing this?
It's hot.
It is warm in here.
This is, we added to this list, we gave you 5 back in May. And then we've been, obviously you've seen the updates down in the far right-hand corner. And we've added a few more, so we're up to 9. And Deborah thinks we're gonna have a few more, maybe another 2 or 3. But we looked through, these were the unique commissions that we know that you want to see what was out there that hadn't been meeting, that needed to meet. And so we did was we took the leftover list from Representative Ebel's committee and updated that. And then we went through other items that we were aware of. And you'll see, as committee and citation, the year was created, the appointees, the government agency, and then the notes as to why they may not have met or that they may have met. And it explains why these items are still in existence. So this list may encompass members that you want to ask to come in before you and ask them what their plans are, because this is what you had been reviewing.
Excellent, this is
Early on.
excellent data.
We were hoping the list would be a little bit longer, but this is at least a starting point, and as we get more, we'll share them with you. We also met with the Senate this morning and asked if they could do a similar activity, if there are any that they're aware that could potentially be repealed or looked at least. And then just also keep in mind, we have study committees that will be self-repealing this year and next year too. So there are some numbers that you don't
Okay.
need to file legislation on that will repeal.
Yeah, I mean, what I was just thinking of the numbers. If, let's say we have a couple of dozen committee chairs, if we say, bring us one from your committee, there's 24 repeals right there. So, we think it's doable to start getting some momentum on this. And I can tell you, having firsthand observation of some of the committees of conference that we went through in June, I know that one of the ones on EDNA, the Senate wanted to create, a commission, and all the members on the House part of the committee of conference, Democrats and Republicans, said, no way. We got enough, no more. And that committee of conference died, and the committee was not created. So that's, I don't claim that as a victory, but it's one less than we would have had if it had been agreed to create another committee. So I take that as a small snippet of information that committee chairs are getting the word that we have too many committees and too many commissions, and they're ready to, turn the spigot off, so to speak. And that was a good example of that. So maybe we can build on that. I'll get into this in a little while as we brief the speaker. And John and I were kind of claiming victory that we were getting the right frame of mind, and the template and the trifold was all coming together. And one of the things that somebody in speaker's staff said, I forget who it was, said, that's good, but do you realize we've had 24 more commissions created since you guys started up? So the feedback was we're losing ground, and we need to be probably a little bit more aggressive going forward.
And I agree with you that education and awareness will, helping to spread the word will get people thinking of other ways to do this. And when we do the trifold and the continuing ed too, reminding folks that you don't have to create a statutory commission to meet on a subject. Statutory study committees are great, but you can also have, and any chair can create a subcommittee. You can meet on these things without creating legislation for them, and that's a very
I'm convinced the
effective-
subcommittee route can take a lot of the starch out of this issue.
And then we also have the chapter studies, which are members only, but we have told a lot of our members, which is what we used to do. We have shared with you, commissions used to be rare. What we did was we had the chapter studies of House and Senate members, and then you'd invite, you literally could invite the people to sit at the table and talk. But then it just evolved to create the commissions, and then they wanted these other entities to be voting members, and that's how it came about.
And this really wouldn't apply for another year or so, but when we brief, and go through orientation for new house members, I think one of the issues that new house members deal with is they're all excited about their campaign and they have a victory, and then they say, I'm going to go and save world hunger, and they show up and they have members of the public who elicited commitments from them, say, I'm going to go do such and such for you. And what that does in many cases is filing a request for a committee to study it. We know, I don't know really what to do with this issue, but we'll study it for a few years. And that's, I think, what gets us into trouble in many cases. Is we don't really know about all these commitments to go study something where it really does, in some cases, doesn't really have the interest that much of that new representative, but the representative has made a commitment to a constituent that they're going to go study something, and then the rest of us are left with how to staff that, and is it really worth studying, and so that's something I think we can help educate our new House members to be very careful about making commitments to constituents that you're going to go study something when you may not have a majority of House members that really want to go do that. And this is to just satisfy a constituent by doing this, you might really be driving the cost of government and driving, all of us to go do things that may not be necessary.
And Representative Dolan, you're exactly right in that. That's part of the piece with the trifold. We have a series of questions we're hoping that we might incorporate, that we developed as well. And it's those questions, and we've shared with you before. Have you done research? Did you check with OLS research? Was this studied before? And just make sure that sponsor checks off all those lists and say, oh, well, I didn't realize that a commission already exists on this, or that the agency could easily help resolve this situation. So you're exactly right. And if we can, obviously, we're looking at attacking this from all ends, from continuing ed, from the trifold, from staff, and I keep thinking this is the last chance to fix this thing, and we're almost there. At least with ideas.
Right. Well, thank you so much for all this additional work that you've done over the summer. It's been very helpful.
You're
I'm-
welcome.
I'm really looking forward to what that trifold looks like, and providing feedback so we can move out with it. Anybody else have any comments for staff, or? Yeah, John.
Well, I'm happy that there will be guidance, because up to now, there really hasn't been any formal guidance for new members to do this. And I know when I came in, you look around and you go, what? How do I do this stuff? And when you have, even at the introduction meetings, there was no guidance on how to do this. And any guidance that we provide will get so much payback. It's ridiculous. Because I think it will. I mean, I've had new members, you've had new members come to you, go, how do we do this? And you're going, wait a minute, I never had training on it either.
Well, I was the chair of municipal and county a couple of years ago, and I can tell you, I didn't have a clue as how many committees or commissions I should have been overseeing or looking into or helping decide what their workload ought to be, or what their focus ought to be. And I would say that I don't think I'm an isolated chair. I think a lot of chairs are in that role. And you ask them how many committees or commissions fall into tier into you as a committee chair. I think most of them are going to shrug their shoulders and say, I have no idea. And I think educating them along those lines is a big first step.
Exactly, just giving this visibility. We had some chairs who said, appoint me to all of my commissions that the policy committee has jurisdiction over, just so they can get to know them and understand, is it really needed? Can they be consolidated or repealed? So, yeah, it has been helpful.
Yeah, this is a quantum leap of from what we had.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of members are going to really appreciate it. And then, like, we have some knowledge about it, some things on it we may not even have realized. And then when we have new members coming in, we can mentor them and say, here, this is the checklist that we've come up with and that we're using. They go, oh, this is really nice. Better than, this that we've had in the past. So I'm all for it.
And so what's the opportunity? Let's look at what the opportunity is. And Matt, you may know, be the best one to answer this. What do we expect in the next election of 2024? What do we think we're going to get for rookie legislators? What's typical? Is it 50 or 60?
A
third.
third.
About a third?
Yeah.
So that is the opportunity, I think, to really educate them as to how to do this right.
Well, one of the items during orientation, they have so much to learn during those first 2.5 days. Traditionally, years ago, we used to have the continuing ed component would follow up right after that, and we could parliamentary procedure, and this was one of the items that we would do. But as we all know, COVID changed a lot of our practices, and we're just embracing everything again. So relate to this, but certainly whoever the new leadership would be in January 2025, this would be something they could look at, because it is so much information, and members need to get there to understand exactly how this process runs, and then understand what the studies are.
Right.
COVID also gave us the opportunity to fast track technology here, though,
That's true.
as all of
Yes.
you know. So
Yes.
we're trying to take advantage of that too. So hopefully what we've given you is helpful. We've got the export, so you have a list of the committees and commissions. And continuing ed, I believe the continuing ed date is a month from tomorrow.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So we'll be working through that program and send that to you for your review, and in case you want to provide input on that. The OLS trifold, as we've mentioned, we should have that draft ready for your review in a week or two. When you guys give that kind of a stamp, we can send it out to the rest of legislators so we can start to put that into practice.
Calendar-wise, I'm going to schedule another meeting in 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
So you can think about at that meeting, anything you might want to present to us or that might be ready for review.
Okay. And then we've given you a list of some committees that you can review for potential repeal. And as we get more, we'll just share them with you.
Right? Yeah,
So
ma'am.
Representative Dolan, so you're looking at September 25th
Yes,
at 1?
yes.
Okay.
As we think about scheduling committee chairs coming to talk with us about the committees and commissions that are under their jurisdiction, I wonder if we can also invite ranking members as well, who may provide a slightly different perspective
Oh, yeah.
on the
Absolutely.
importance of certain issues. I think it'll make sure that we continue to operate in a really bipartisan way.
I agree.
Very good idea.
They're also generally
Yeah.
the ones who serve on them as well, too, so.
Committee leadership, how do
There
we
we
call
go.
it that? Committee
There we go.
leadership.
Do we want chairs, vice chairs, and ranking members, or just chairs and ranking members? You think?
I think either way, I mean, it'd be good for them to let everyone know. I know on the Democratic side, we've got, ranking members and deputy ranking members. So I
And
think,
you have
I think it's important for the chairs and the ranking members to be there. And then if they want to let other members of their
wanna bring
committee
other
know that we're going to have this conversation, it's obviously open to the public. And
Good idea. I think that one of the hallmarks of this committee thus far is that we've had no party interference or issues I think we're all on the same page as to this is something that needs to be done, regardless of the content. This is more of a process and procedure change that we're looking at. Okay, well, thank you guys very much. Anything else you want to
No,
drop on
just,
the table?
just we know what we want for the items for the next meeting, and so we will have that for you, and,
Okay.
Well,
that's what we-
trifold,
trifold.
that's probably
Yeah.
the biggest thing.
And
Until we start looking at that.
and the spreadsheet,
Yes.
if we could get IT to help us do a sort on the spreadsheet so that we could say, tell me how this all tiers into the education committee chair, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that field will be available yet, but I had promised, all chairs that I would send them a list of their commissions and committees. So what I could do is I could put you on the CC of each of
Okay.
those emails, if that's
Yeah, that's good.
helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll share it with all of you guys.
But the export, feel free, I'm gonna send you a link, feel free to play around with the export. and
Ooh, yeah.
Just knowing that we're working to clean up the data.
I can't wait.
Can you help with the clerk's office to get the notice out of our next meeting?
Yes,
2
your
weeks.
committee assistant is Jamie, and she automatically does that, so she's listening right now,
Oh.
because you booked that through House Community Services.
Hey,
And
Jamie.
then-
Hi, Jamie.
She's watching anyway.
And we'll put that right into, XM like, so it's all set for this room,
Okay.
and hopefully it'll be much
Yeah,
cooler.
air conditioner will be
That's my
working.
plan.
Maybe we'll be deeper closer to the autumn so we can open the windows.
Autumnal.
Well, thank you all very much. You're welcome to stay and listen in to the rest of the discussion we're gonna have, but I think we can let you guys go now.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Meeting 2 weeks out and 4 weeks out, 4 weeks out.
Actually, we're not closed on Columbus Day.
yeah, we'll still have a discussion about it because I'm not sure how everybody feels about meeting on Columbus Day, especially with those of us who have children that will be home from school that need our attention. I think we need to stay sensitive to that. We certainly don't want people having to go out
Or we
and hire
can-
childcare for that.
or we can go a week after that. Doesn't matter.
Well, a week before.
No, that's 2 consecutive weeks.
I also want to flag the 25th, I think is Yom Kippur.
25th
it?
with a question. Oh, the 9th with a question.
I mean, we could do the 18th and the 2nd. Or the 25th
Then October
and the
30th,
16th.
that'll be close to Halloween. There's always holidays somewhere.
So the 25th of October is you?
25th of September is good. October 9th is Halloween, or Columbus Day. I have no problem with that.
October 9th.
Well,
Columbus Day will be a challenge for me.
How about October 10th? It's a Tuesday. You guys have committee meetings on Tuesday that might
Yeah,
conflict?
I don't know. I don't have my calendar. I forgot if John has scheduled anything. I know he's scheduled one day. Full bore. Every retained bill
Okay,
by
so
subcommittee.
do you have an objection to Yom Kippur, the 25th? Or just, you want to just
I
alert
know there's well over 20.
us to that?
I think more than anything, I wanted to make sure it wasn't a conflict for anybody on the committee
Been a long day.
or anybody that we might be inviting
I,
to be guests.
I
that
think
day.
if you have a religious holiday that you feel compelled to observe, that, I think we need to honor that. And we just need to be careful that if there is a widespread observance of that holiday, it doesn't put us into a situation where we don't have a quorum. So, I mean,
Well-
if we lose 1 or 2 members to a religious holiday, as long as we still have a quorum, then I'm okay with that. But I don't want to schedule something and then lose the quorum because of that. So
Well,
if you all could, what's that? The 25th of this month is Yom Kippur. So if I would ask you to look at that, and if that's an objectionable date for you, or that's a religious observance date for you that will cause you to be absent, let me know, and then I can evaluate whether or not it would affect our quorum. And 10/9, I think is already off the table because of it's going to be a school holiday. So I'm looking at 10/10. So let me know if check the calendar, the house calendar, and see if it conflicts with any of your regular committee meetings. Yes, ma'am.
Yom Kippur is one of the Jewish high holy days, and we don't know yet who else we're gonna want to come to the committee on that day, so it's also gonna limit, we won't have a way of knowing whether we'd be inviting somebody who celebrates that. And then I also just checked with, my family has it off school that day, so I'm not sure that
So
I'll be available.
So what do you October 2nd instead of the 9th? Instead of the,
Yeah,
go 3 weeks?
yeah,
But then we'll be able to hopefully do it again in 2 weeks as opposed to.
okay. All right,
yeah, no, that sounds great to me.
let's do that. Let's plan our next meeting October 2nd at 1 o'clock.
Jamie, did you get that?
So that way we can avoid the High Holy Day Yom Kippur on the 25th, and also hopefully we can avoid the Columbus Day holiday on the 9th of October. Okay, so we're gonna meet October 2nd.
And then 2 weeks after that will be the 16th.
What's that? Yeah, we'll be targeting the 16th for the next meeting beyond October 16th.
October 2nd and then 16th.
Right, that's what I said, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I know I won't be able to be there on the 16th, but that's. If I'm the only one, carry on.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
all right, a couple other things I want to talk about. I mentioned the Rules Committee that will be available to us to do some legislative action towards the end of the year. And that Matt's got some good input that when we start interviewing chairs, to call in the ranking members as well, so that we continue to have a unified approach here and not just a single party approach. One thing that I did want to comment on were when John and I met with the speaker and his staff to give an update as to how our committee was doing, but we did that in June. And the speaker was pleased, I can say this, if I could characterize his mood, that he was pleased that we had made some progress, that we've got some templates that are coming, especially in order to focus, because we have focused more on the process thus far in this committee, as opposed to actually repealing committees or commissions. And that's to be next, I guess. I didn't get the sense, he didn't say he was disappointed, the fact that we didn't have a whole list of committees ready to be repealed. But I got the sense, my characterization, that he was a little disappointed that we didn't have that. But he understands what we're up against because he's been through this before. And it was very difficult before, especially with the whole interference of COVID and how COVID interrupted more than we can really talk about. I mean, with all the changes in the how we meet and what's a quorum and electronically meetings and so forth. So that's behind us, yet we're still dealing with the impact of that. So he understood all that. I think he was pleased that we had some plans going forward, and he's also pleased with staff members that said that they felt good about the progress. And again, we're focusing on the process. It was a takeaway from me from that meeting with him that his hope is that by the end of the year, we have at least 2 or 3 dozen named committees that will be putting into the category of repeal. So if we could set that as our informal target as we go forward, that would, I think, fulfill his desires. And I think you can all speak for yourselves, but I think that is going to be a real push for us. And that would, I think we could declare at least first year victory if we did that, and then we can build upon that for 2024. We got a good list that the staff brought us that gets us up to probably a dozen or so. And I can tell you, that if you look at the third line down, the Commission on Demographic Trends, I do know that there was already some legislation brought forward to ED&A to add another committee on demographic trends, in spite of the fact that this one already exists, and it was rejected because by the chairperson, because we get so much good data out of UNH right now. They do this and they do it for us for free, and we can choose to accept or reject it when it comes, but it doesn't require a committee or a commission to do anything. Just get the data right into the committee, and then the committee can decide what to do with it. So that's again, a minor victory, but we'll take it if that's all we can get right now. Yes.
Do we want to, does somebody on this committee want to file legislation with respect to that list right there this week? And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that we potentially have legislation so a routine bill has to be acted upon, right? Within, I think, by January 3rd, right? It has to be acted on within a given time frame. If we file legislation with that pretty much opens the door that could be amended anytime between now and crossover. It might just make things a little bit easier. I don't know if we have to go back to the Rules Committee either. I think with a 2/3 vote, I think we could introduce legislation anytime, if I'm not mistaken. But it's just another avenue, a suggestion that we might want to put it out, or somebody might want to put it in LSR this week with those committees on it, in order to have something in place that could be amended, either passed as is or amended.
How does the committee feel about that?
I think it makes a lot of sense from just a timeline perspective, rather than needing a majority of the Rules Committee or 2/3 of the House, to introduce a new bill, to take what we've got here now and then bring an amendment when it's heard in front of Ledge Admin, or who knows, maybe gets assigned to our committee.
And I've been kind of hoping we'd do something like that so that people could see we're moving forward, trying to do something to correct the problems we have.
Comment from you, Ann? What do you think? Come up to so that come on up so we can everybody can hear you.
I think it would be good as a placeholder. And I agree.
Thank you. What Representative Patusek just said makes, Representative Kofal, makes a lot of sense, but you do have to see that column where it has the explanation. So I don't know if you put all 9 bills on there automatically, because I think maybe like Representative Hunt, I believe, is putting in repeal language for something, and I believe Representative Harrington is putting in repeal language. So maybe you do put in a bill, because that's what we used to do. We used to have one bill that would list all the repeals. And maybe that's what you do as a
Would that-
placeholder and start off with
Would that
those.
be a bill that would be put in through Leggy Admin, or is that a standalone bill that?
I think what Representative Kofal just said, to just put in an LSR right now, that you would start the list, but you'd have to look at the list that you have and decide which ones would be in there. Because there are some that explain why they're still in existence and some,
Well, a strategy could be to put them all on the list, and then we can always edit the LSR. We can line a few out if they're not ready, or if we made a mistake or whatever, and change it in that way. What do you think?
I agree, or, whatever committee it's assigned to can essentially work with it from there with a recommendation, an informal recommendation from this committee.
Well, if we put if we put a bill in that captures all nine of these, right?
I believe so.
It captures all 9 of these. Do we suspect the speaker would assign that out to
could be
someone,
assigned-
or would it come to us?
Could be assigned to our committee.
I think it would be, Speaker's going to start assigning bills to the Child Care Committee and the Housing Committee, which are also special committees. So I imagine we can make a strong case for it to be assigned here. And I would make the recommendation, what's still unclear to me is what's the process we're using to make sure that the right commissions end up on this list? Because I don't know the political ramifications of putting all 9 of these on here and filing it as an LSR. It could be that we just file it with one for now, that we know we're absolutely committed to repealing.
Amend it.
But I think that's something we need to flesh out as a committee, is figure out, like, yes, we're inviting chairs and ranking members to join us to offer feedback about bills that are in their, under their jurisdiction. But what's the process we're gonna go through? What's the standard? What are the, similar to the trifold, what are the things that need to be part of a commission in order to create one? What are the things that we're looking for? What's the criteria we're using to decide what end up on this list? Because it's no small thing. I all for, removing some committees and commissions or some commissions that we deem are, inactive. That's one thing, right? But if it's, if it's duplicative, how do we determine whether or not it's duplicative? I just think we need to have some conversations to figure out what that is.
So,
Agreed. My intention was simply to sort of get the ball rolling so that we have a placeholder as.
right,
as-
that's, and just a second, practically speaking, one of the ways to do this is to pick one that we're sure of,
Yeah.
and then add to it. That
Yeah.
on some discussion, we could add up to 9 or so, or 8 more. Or the reverse, put all 9 on there and start deleting ones that we're not sure of. Do you have any, Representative Wall, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with what everyone's saying. I'm thinking, once the bill's drafted and all, it'll come back so that we can have a look at it before it's finally signed off. We've got what's our window of opportunity there? How many days? Is there a limit? I've forgotten.
I don't know what
Yeah.
I don't know what,
Yeah.
I mean, I know the deadline is Friday, but then after that, once
Yeah.
it's drafted out.
Yeah,
then
that's
you're-
not what I'm
Edit it to
thinking.
10 days, right?
10
I'm thinking-
days,
I'm
and then
thinking
they all
once
have to be
Once
signed
it's
off.
drafted, we'll have a sense of what this looks like. Then if we have to do any kind of amending or whatever,
But once
it
it's
can go into
drafted-
redraft.
Once it's drafted, I don't think we're gonna have time to review it at our next meeting on,
October 2nd.
yeah, I think that too much time on the calendar will tick off and then it will die. I think we get 10 days to,
Right, so we'll have 10 days once OLS sends it back to the prime sponsor, 10 days for the prime sponsor and all co-sponsors to sign off. And then I think November 2nd is the final date for all sign-offs, whether or not you have the 10 days or not. November 2nd, I think, is the final date. The Senate has a different schedule. I don't think we want to do this as a Senate bill, but I mean, that's just another comment here. So they have a wider window of opportunity. So, yeah, I mean, I guess my thought, based on what you said, is that we probably want to just take the most obvious one that we want to repeal. One, uh, one commission and draft a bill. Somebody needs to step forward as the prime sponsor of that. Um, That person presumably cannot fully participate in debate on the bill once it comes, if it comes to this committee, so we might want to have someone outside of this committee do that. It just seems to me that like with we could relatively easily put a placeholder in effect now that would save some headaches later.
He's gonna put a bill in.
Is it on here?
Over here, son. Check with John Hunt. He said he was gonna put in a bill to kill one. That'll be the bill.
Okay,
Right here.
So,
That'll be the placeholder.
the fourth line down on the second page. Commission on the status of health coverage markets for individuals and small employers.
and that one sunsets at the end of 2024
Yeah.
anyway, so it probably the easiest and least controversial here
Exactly.
would be my guess.
You know, we could just amend the crap out of it later.
This one.
Well, we'd have to amend it prior to our next meeting because the deadline will.
No, not if it's assigned to us
Wanna
as
go
a
to
committee.
Commerce.
If it's assigned to us as a committee or any other committee,
Oh, I
we
see.
can propose amendments through the committee process and then
But will-
basically up until
will those
crossover.
With those amendments, can those amendments add additional commissions to be
Yes.
deleted?
And I would assume that, I mean, worst case, the speaker says it's non-germane and we have to hold it a non-germane amendment hearing. But I
Yeah.
I
into this
doubt we're gonna get a
committee.
crowd for that. So, again,
probably the right
just,
thing to do.
just suggesting that if we want to do that, this week is the window of opportunity to do it. And if we think that Representative Hunt is going to be filing a bill, we need to make sure so that we don't miss the
Do
window
we
of
have a
opportunity.
volunteer to write the LSR?
I'll actually be seeing him tomorrow
Representative
in the
Hunt?
morning at a meeting, yeah. And can ask him what his intent is and say that the committee's considering filing legislation to repeal. Would that be agreeable?
Well, all right, next step, and after that meeting is
Yeah.
to identify
Get in touch
an
with you.
author for the LSR.
Yeah,
I think it's Representative Hunt. I think it sounds like Representative Hunt's already gonna file the LSR. He's already planning to
Okay.
file that one.
He's
So
already
it's just
done it.
confirming that he's gonna get it in this week. And I
Alright.
think that's what Representative Wall's gonna do.
Okay. Sounds like a plan to me. You all good with that?
Get in touch with you, Mr. Templeton. Which phone?
Anybody,
You're good.
I think it would be helpful if some of us maybe signed up to be co-sponsors for Representative Hunt? Or does that mean we can't
I
discuss
think
it?
as co-sponsors, we may not be able to participate
Can't
fully in the
deliberate on it.
discussion.
We should-
Because if he sponsors it, it's an insurance bill, it's gonna come to Commerce. And I sit on Commerce,
Okay.
and I'm on the subcommittee.
And you good with that, Representative Hunt?
He knows the history in general of all of these things.
Representative Wall, you're gonna speak to him specifically about this issue and what our strategy is?
That would work. I'm happy to talk with him about that.
Okay.
He's chairing the committee I'll be at tomorrow.
Are you gonna talk to him?
Hmm?
You wanna talk to him too?
I talk to him all the time anyway.
And it could be that we ask him to add another one or two commissions that we feel like, are also pretty non-controversial. Because then if there's a variety of subject matters, I think it will increase the likelihood of it being assigned to this committee and not to Commerce.
Okay, and what I can do is I can get a message to the speaker, because as he assigns these to the committees, maybe I can convince him to assign it to us. And this will be kind of a test bed for us with this first effort. And because I know he's looking for us to start making some progress, and he can help us by assigning it to us.
Yeah, he'll be happy to see there's a bill sitting.
You're right. Right. Okay, good. I think that's good progress. Anybody else have any final comments before we close our session? That covered everything I was planning on talking to. And we get some good input. I like the fact that they're inviting ranking members. I think that's good input to keep this bipartisan.
When would we look to do that, to invite the committee chairs to are we a few meetings out from that, or are we thinking?
I
October?
think I'll take that on as a project.
I was just curious.
Start
how-
looking
yeah.
at who the chairs are that are candidates for this.
Yeah.
And I'll work with Ann, and we'll see about inviting them, putting them on the agenda, if you will, of our upcoming meetings, so that we can kick off a discussion, let's say a 1 o'clock discussion, and then maybe at 1:15 or 1:30, we start, Chairman X and Ranking Member Y are going to talk to us, or we're going to talk to them about this. And maybe another half hour, we could have another one come in. Maybe, I'm thinking 2 or 3 per meeting. Does that sound right to you?
It is the idea that we would talk to them sort of about what we're trying to do here initially, and then potentially invite them back with, to come back with a list, as you suggested,
we
of
could-
potential
That's one
committees to do.
technique, or I could prep them ahead of time saying, come to
That's
the
right.
meeting
Yeah. Okay. I was
with
wondering.
some candidates for repeal.
Okay. And then probably in that case, we give them a little more time before the date we give them to come in, right? Obviously to prepare. But okay, I was just curious. I guess either way, that we could do it.
Okay. Any other comments or feedback? Good suggestions. Thank you. And thank you, Ann, for all the hard work. I know behind the scenes. And the young lady that's monitoring our Jamie, our staff. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I'll get back to you, Jamie, about if we need to add some detailed comments on the agenda, the next agenda, if we can nail down some guest speakers, if you will. And do you have any thoughts about whether you or Deborah need to speak at our next meeting?
Well, possibly to explain the tripod.
Okay. All right, let's, I think it's healthier for us to plan on it. If we have to cancel it off the agenda, we'll cancel it, but let's plan, because we have 3 weeks.
Yes, 3 weeks.
So,
Better than 2.
yeah, right. Right. All right, well, thank you, everybody, and please keep in mind the solemnness of today with the anniversary of 9/11, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you. We're adjourned.